Well, welcome to the Impactus Podcast, where we equip you as a man for a life of purpose and godly impact. My name is Kirk Giles, and we are on episode number 10, talking about our health today during a COVID lockdown. Our guest today and Impactus.org contributor, Rob Nairn. But before we get to our conversation with Rob, I just want to remind all of you about a special live stream event that's happening on Wednesday, January the 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be talking about growing in transparency and intimacy in your marriage. Our guests are going to be Ryan and Selena Frederick from Fierce Marriage. You can check it out on the Promise Keepers Canada Impactus Facebook page and YouTube channel, both live streamed on January 20th, as well as after that date is done, you can go back to the YouTube channel and rewatch it if you missed the live stream. Well, Rob, welcome to the podcast. Great to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kirk. I think it's been over a year and a half since I last seen you. I think the last time I saw you was at the Impactus conference, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah, it would have been. It was like just before COVID became a thing.
That was literally weeks before, or not even. I think COVID was just maybe a week or two before that, and then everything just hit the fan. So
it did.
Yeah, it's great to have me on here, and it's looking forward to chatting with you. So.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you on here, and we've known each other for quite a while, just because I've worked with your dad at Promise Keepers. But there's a lot of our listeners who aren't familiar with you or why we are having this conversation about physical health with you today. So maybe just take a minute, introduce everybody to who you are and why we're having this conversation about health today.
Yeah, totally. So as you mentioned, Kirk, my name's Rob Nairn. Some of you may recognize that last name. As Kirk said, my dad, Ian Nairn, has been working for Promise Keepers Canada for almost 25 years. And so, I've been born and raised in Winnipeg for all of my 30 years now. Just recently got married about 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, and to my wife, Kirsten. We're actually expecting our first child at the end of April. So super exciting about that and super pumped and looking forward to the new challenges that will come with that. Physical activity has always been something that I've been just really passionate about ever since I was little. All throughout middle school and junior high and high school, basketball was something that was always something I was always passionate about and really involved in. And then it wasn't until grade 12, actually, I had a really bad spare in high school. It was the second slot of the day. And you can only do so much homework and you can only do so much homework and stuff. So I thought, what can I do to kind of keep active? And luckily for me, where I went to high school was Miles Mac here in Winnipeg. And there's a YMCA about 30 steps from the high school. So it was perfect. So I ended up going there, and that's where my passion for working out and for fitness really started for me. And I would say about 4 years ago, I actually worked at that same YMCA, and I was just part-time, just kind of, making some extra money. I wasn't actually able to train people, but what I was able to do was to bring new members in that were signing up and to take them around the gym and show them around and show them different equipment and kind of give them any advice that they needed for how to start a workout. I've always had friends of mine and people within the gym always ask me like, hey, what do you do for this? What can I do to work my back or whatever? And so I thought, why don't I become a personal trainer and do something that I'm passionate about and actually get paid to do? So right now I'm in the final stage of my process of becoming a certified personal trainer. It's 3 exams and a practicum that I have to do. So I've already done 2 exams. I just have one more exam to do, one more practicum to do. Unfortunately, though, with COVID, the way that it is, it's kind of slowed down the process of me becoming certified quicker than I wanted to. So I'm hoping within the next month or two, the program that I'm doing, they're kind of finding different ways to get people through with their program and to actually become certified. So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I know COVID has slowed everything down for a lot of people in terms of their timelines and their goals. And
Yeah.
congratulations to you on being a dad. Forever and a day, you'll be able to tell your kid that they are a COVID baby, and it is
Yeah.
going to be a lot of fun. I'm super happy for you guys and this new chapter of your life that's coming up. As you talk about this idea of you being able to do what you're passionate about and get paid for it. I mean, that's one of the real gifts in life when you can do that. And so we want to try and just help guys out with their physical health today. It is at the best of times. Winter is really a season where it's challenging for a lot of Canadians in terms of physical health.
Yeah.
We when it's minus, well, you're in Winnipeg, so it can be minus.
It's been nice out there, actually, surprisingly. I don't know what it's like for you guys out there, but
It's not too bad today, but like I've been in the prairies in the winter long enough to know that it can be a minus ungodly temperature on any
absolutely.
given day, and so like in a normal winter, it can be hard to go outside and catch up on your physical health after Christmas, and now we add in this reality of a pandemic and there's just all kinds of lifestyle changes that COVID has forced on our lives. And a lot of people are living in areas of wherever they're living, where even the gym in their community is shut down right now because of COVID restrictions. So we want to really just have a good, honest conversation about how do we take care of our health during this kind of a season that we find ourselves in. So let's maybe start at a real high level in our discussion. When it comes to just some of the most important things that somebody should be thinking about when it comes to their physical health, what are some things they should be considering, especially if they find themselves spending more time at home than they normally would?
Yeah, no, definitely. The amount of time that we spend sitting and lying around is pretty much through the roof through this pandemic. Like you say, with gyms being closed and just not a lot of things being open, there's not really a lot to do. So the thing that we should be thinking about is how much time we're spending lying down and sitting down, because that can have some negative impacts on our health, of course, such as high blood sugar, high blood pressure, putting on extra weight, which I'm sure a lot of us have done, including myself, unfortunately. And yeah, some different cardiovascular diseases as well come with that. So being very aware of that, being able to watch shows and movies is great, but doing it for long bouts of time really isn't healthy for us. So being aware of that and being able to get up and at least walk around the house or stretch, just do some sort of physical activity to prevent long bouts of sitting down. And sitting down for more than 8 hours a day really is not good for you. But for consecutively, it's just awful. I get really stiff and I get headaches when I do that. So I think it's important that we try our best to get up and stretch and to just walk around. And our posture. My wife has corrected me on my posture over the last 2 years. I never really looked at posture as something that was important, to be quite honest with you. It just never was a thought of mine until I met my wife, and she's like, babe, you're always hunched over when you have dinner, or when we're walking, you're not standing up straight. And she's got a point, and she's totally right on that. And it keeps our body aligned, and it prevents strains on our muscles and our joints and our spine. And so things like that, things like rounded shoulders is another thing that I know a couple people have told me about, people who work at desk jobs. That's very common as well. And obviously with people working at home, nothing's really changed for them. They're still at a desk. So being very aware of that. And there's all sorts of stretches that you can do to prevent rounded shoulders. And that's not the only thing. There's things like sore neck, low back. I've occasionally had low back pain I've had low back pain over the last couple of months, and it's due to the fact that I'm not doing as much physical activity. So I think that's important. And again, you can look up so many different stretches to prevent those things. So another thing to think about is just our long-term health goals. What are the things that we're wanting to achieve and to do? So I think it's important that we sit down and be honest with ourselves and what exactly we're wanting with our goals and our expectations. I think we should also set realistic expectations. I think that's really, really important. There's nothing wrong with setting lofty expectations. I think the only problem with that, though, is that when you set those lofty expectations off the get-go and you don't meet them, it's kind of it's not depressing, but it's just you don't feel like you're accomplishing anything. So I think it's important that you take baby steps and you write down goals that you know are you can achieve and you can accomplish off the get-go, and making sure that we set good habits as well. It's so much easier to get into a bad habit than a good habit. It's just human nature. We find ourselves doing stuff that we know isn't healthy, but it's just so easy to do. So being very aware of that and thinking about that. And fun fact, actually, it takes 40 days to build a new habit. Now, I know that may seem like a long time to a lot of us, to me especially as well. It does feel like a long time, but it's important that you start a new habit, especially in this pandemic. We have the time to do it for the most part. So I think it's important that we get into a new habit and a new routine. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are great tips, Rob. I think that there's a lot for us to think about. I know for me, I'm stuck I shouldn't say stuck, that's the wrong word, but I have a desk job. And so a lot of my time is spent, and even when I was working for the ministry, I was sitting at a desk for most of the day. And so it's amazing how quickly the day goes by. If you're busy and you got a lot going on, you're just sitting there. You don't even think about getting up to stretch, and you don't even think about, just the right movements and motions and posture you need to take while you're sitting at a desk job. I've had to deal with the rounded shoulders issue and the things that creates in terms of tension in my shoulders and up into my neck and headaches that come from that. I've had to deal with my back and having back pain and things like that. And even just, not moving in terms of what that does for your overall health of burning calories in a day and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I'm learning to do, I'm not totally disciplined on it yet, but somebody shared this with me, was if you have a desk job through the day and you just find yourself never stretching, never taking those moments to move around a little bit, set an alarm on your phone for about once every 50 minutes, every 55 minutes or so, and just take 5 minutes every hour to stretch, to move, to do something, just to realign yourself so that you're not stuck in the same posture for an 8 or a 9 or a 10-hour day, depending on what your hours are like. So, I think that those are some really good areas for us at a high level to be thinking about. Let's talk about eating for a minute, because that's like one of my favorite subjects. Actually, confession time. Before we got onto this conversation, I had a double stuffed Oreo cookie, just because it was there calling my name, and I needed to do that so I could confess that sin to you this morning. So a lot of people are, at the best of times, even before COVID, eating's a challenge, especially if you work in an environment where you have to eat out all the time in restaurants. There's lots of high calorie, high fat foods in restaurants. Yeah. A lot of us are working from home now more during the pandemic and during shutdowns. So how do we make sure, especially if our routines are all changed during COVID and we're spending more time at home and the Oreo, the double stuffed Oreo is like just 5 steps away calling your name, right? Or the bag of cheesies that are right beside it. How do we make sure that we are eating in a way that's going to be healthy for us during this kind of a season?
Yeah, totally. This seems very obvious, but avoid buying large quantities of junk food. It's very easy to buy things that we really like, and junk food is obviously something that we all like, but being very diligent in how much we're buying of that. So I usually do the shopping for me and my wife, and Costco is somewhere that I usually go. And I always find it just just funny that it's when you go past the potato chip aisle, it's the party sized size. I just think like, do we need like a size that big? I mean, for me and my wife, there's just two of us. So it's like, it's not really needed to buy that kind of stuff. So just tips such as, just buying the regular size chip or buying even a smaller bag. For me and my wife, we have small bowls that we use. And we usually just take once or twice a week, we take one or two bowls, we tie the bag back up, put it back downstairs. It's out of sight, out of mind. It's never a good thing for that thing to just be staring at you, looking at you, and you're just wanting more of it. So it's best to just get it out of the area of the house that you're sitting at. So it's important just to be. It's important to have junk food every now and then, but I think it's important to have it in smaller doses instead of completely withholding from it, and then you end up binging on it. So there's that healthy balance of that. So, and I think it's also important to avoid buying soda as well. That's obviously a no-brainer. But there are things that you can do. Stuff like bubbly. I don't know if a lot of guys know about that, but that's something that we've had a lot of, and it's been really, really great. When it comes to my diet too, I greatly value my wife and what she has for advice for me. She always sets me on track, and vice versa. So being able to use our spouses and to make sure that we're both staying on track for that. I think again, moderation is key. Making sure that we're not having too much of something. It's good to have, junk food, as I said, but making sure we're not completely indulging in it and just binging on it. So, and for myself, I really like to meal plan throughout the week for my work. I work for the city of Winnipeg for water and waste, and I always make sure that I have what I need for the week, so that I avoid buying out at grocery stores or fast food restaurants. I usually have my own truck, so I have the ability to go do that. So making sure that your plan throughout the week for food is essential as well, and also for dinners. So when you get home, one of the things that we do here at our house is we like to write down a list of things that we'd like for dinner, and then make sure that you have all the necessary ingredients and all the things that you need. And then make sure you obviously go to the store, get all that you need, so that when it comes time to making those dinners, it's simply just putting the ingredients together, making it, and then eating it, so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh crap, we don't have anything to eat for dinner, and then you go out and buy fast food or whatever, you go eat out. And in all honesty, like for me and my wife, eating out is a treat for us. It's not something that we look at as something that we should do on occasion. We usually eat out once or twice a month, and we always support local businesses. And so, I think it's important to have a plan of what you're wanting to eat throughout the week, and to stick to that, and to avoid getting yourself caught in not having anything to eat for dinner. So,
do you do things like calorie counting or anything like that?
You know what? I used to do that, but the older I've got, I don't know, something happened where I didn't, I don't know. I used to do that, but not anymore. I'm just very aware of what we eat. And
right.
I think it takes a lot of time and energy to count calories. I mean, it does seem like extra work. So, I used to do that, but not too much anymore.
I think probably getting into the routine of a healthy eating plan probably means you don't have to worry about calorie counting, right? No. Calorie counting only matters if you already know you're going to eat all kinds of junk food. Yeah. I remember just talking about food. At one point in time, there's an article on the Impactus website about this. Nobody taught me how to eat when I travel on the road. And so my job with the ministry required a lot of traveling. And I did not realize how much weight I was putting on. I actually topped out at around 280 pounds. And I had a wake-up call from something that my son drew of our family one day, and everybody was stick figures in the family. And then there was this one person in the middle of the picture that looked like the Michelin tire man. And I said, oh, this is a great picture of the family. Where am I?
Yeah, where am I?
And he points at the Michelin tire man.
Right
and
there,
yeah, so like, that's the kind of honesty you can look forward to from your kid. And so that was a wake up call for me. Like, oh man, like that, that's what I look like. And I didn't even realize it because it was happening so incrementally in my life. So some of the things that you've talked about here became important things for me. I guess I'm saying this just to reinforce for people, for guys who are listening, things like changing your diet, things like removing soda pop from your diet.
And it seems all obvious, but it's true. Like you say, Kirk, like sometimes you just get into a bad habit and you completely forget how far you've gone. And then you're like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to take a step back here and, reevaluate what I'm eating here. So
yeah, absolutely. One of the challenges that I've had when we're talking about food is the reality is that a lot of the healthiest foods are also the most expensive foods. And most of us are living on a budget. And most of us have seen our grocery bills go up higher during COVID. So, like, is there a way that we can balance our budget and our food choices? I find a lot of people struggle with that reality right now.
Yeah, I always had this preconceived notion that in order to eat healthy, it does cost you more. And in all reality, that isn't totally true. There's lots of ways to avoid spending lots of money and eat healthy. So just a couple of things. So replacing meat with other sources of protein, things such as lentils, chickpeas, black beans, split peas, those are just great sources of protein. And what's great about those items is that you can buy them at your local superstore, and we get a 900-gram bag of those items. And what's great about that is it's only $2, and it's super, super inexpensive, and it lasts a long time. So usually what we do is we boil it. We boil about half that package, and then we take what we want, and then we're able to freeze what we don't want. And so it's great. And there's all sorts of different things you can do. So if you're getting tired of chickpeas and you already have chickpeas made, well, you can make hummus with that. You can have it on toast, or you can have it with other vegetables. So there's a lot of really good recipes with those items as well. We've found a lot. So buying produce when it's in season, that can be really expensive if you're not buying it in season. So finding those items in season is really, really important because it's very inexpensive, and you get all the necessary nutrients and flavor when you do buy it in season. And then if you do want to buy more because it's cheaper, you can cut it up and freeze it up and put it in the freezer and have it whenever you want. So that's another tip. Buying frozen fruits and vegetables is another great way. Super inexpensive. You can add it to smoothies and different recipes. And again, you can take what you want from the freezer, add it to your smoothies and your recipes that you're wanting to make. And then you can just obviously leave the rest in the freezer. So, and growing your own produce as well. My wife has done that over the last couple of years, even before I met her and I married her. And she plants tomatoes, green onions, basil, pumpkin. And we've been able to use all that for different recipes. And obviously you save money that way. You don't have to go out and buy it. It's right in your own backyard. So it's great. And buying whole foods. So things such as, white rice, brown rice, oats. Those are very filling, and they're really not expensive because you get so much of it. So it lasts you a long time. And another great alternative, if you're getting tired of those things, is quinoa. Quinoa is a great source of protein. It's packed with it. And again, it's just another alternative to rice if you're getting, kind of tired of it. And obviously, as I mentioned before, plan your meals. That's like super, super important. Again, because if you are able to plan your meals, you know what you need to get. You go to that grocery store and you get all that you need. And again, I always thought that too, Kirk. I always thought that buying healthy foods was expensive. But if you plan accordingly and you're diligent with, when you're buying things, like I mentioned before, when you're buying produce in season, buying in bulk. And again, I would really encourage people to buy lentils and green beans, chickpeas, excuse me, in those 900 gram bags. It's only $2. It lasts a long, long time, as opposed to buying it in a can. We actually don't buy those items in cans, just because I think it's about $1.50. And there's not as much of it. So yeah.
Wow, that's great. Those are some really great tips. I guess it's probably more expensive when you're trying to add that food on top of the junk food that you normally buy, and that's what makes it more expensive. But I think if you plan out your food the way you're describing, you can still find ways to make it work inside of a budget. So those are some really great tips.
Actually, no, sorry, Kirk, I just thought of this too. Actually, I have this app called Flip. It's FLIPP. Many guys may have heard of that, but it's essentially a coupon in an app. Like, you get all that you need in that app. For me, I don't really like getting coupons. It's too messy. You get too much of it. And what's great about that is, if you're needing a certain item for food or for recipe, you type in that item. It shows you where it is and where it is at the most inexpensive place. So yeah, I just thought I would mention that. So
no, that's cool. Great idea. One of the challenges that I'm having right now is where I live, all the gyms are closed.
Yeah.
So I go to a gym that's literally 30 seconds from my house, and it's closed, and so I can't get into exercise. And I hate Canadian winters, so going outside is like really, yeah. Anyway, and then, even in normal times, for a lot of people, economic realities also mean that they can't always afford a gym membership.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that we can exercise? We all know we need to exercise. But what are some ways we can exercise even from home?
Yeah. I always had this thought that in order to get a proper workout, you had to go to your local gym, which again isn't true. This pandemic has showed me a lot of different things that you can do around the house. So when this pandemic hit, I started off doing a lot of body weight exercises, because we don't have equipment in our house. We've never needed to. We've always had gyms open at our disposal, so we can always do that. So I would always start off with body weight exercises like push-ups and sit-ups, but in all honesty, that gets really redundant and boring. And you can only do so many of those things to the point where you're just like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm not motivated anymore. Like, this is boring. And so it was at that point where I thought, there's got to be stuff around the house. Like, what is it that we have in our home that we could use to use for equipment? And so I kind of just started walking around the house, and I thought, okay, I see some 2 gallon, or the milk cartons, like the 1 liter or 2 liter water jugs or milk jugs. I thought, okay, that's interesting. I can use that. And I kind of kept looking, and I thought, wow, there's a 5 gallon water jug that we've never used. Okay, well, that's something I can use. And what's great about those items is that you can add and subtract the amount of resistance that you want when you are using those items for working out. And I thought, okay, those 2 items are great, but that's not really enough. There's got to be something more. And I ended up finding some micro bands that I got from being at the chiropractor about a year ago. I had a really bad neck from a sport injury. Anyway, so the chiropractor gave me these micro bands that I, of course, never used. I probably should have. And so I thought, okay, these are pretty useful. I can use these too. We also have some resistance bands as well that I've never known that we've had. So I thought, wow, okay, there's some good items here that I could use. And I actually wrote this in my article about the different exercises that you can do. So if guys are wanting, they can look at that article that I posted. And it kind of just gives a bunch of different workouts and exercises that you can do with those items. And yeah, so, that's great for your muscular endurance, but what about cardiovascular endurance? Mm-hmm. And so there's not a whole lot you can do around the house unless you have a treadmill, which I don't. There's not really a lot you can do in terms of cardiovascular exercise. So I thought, okay, you can go for walks, you can go out for runs, but it's tough in the wintertime to go for runs because there's snow and there's ice, and it's just not really ideal unless you have a path that's completely shoveled. It's just not really ideal. So I thought, well, what about ice skating? Ice skating is just great. I think I've enjoyed doing ice skating. I just recently started doing that about 2 years ago. And cross-country skiing is phenomenal. My wife got me into that last year, and that is a heck of a workout.
It is.
It is unreal. I always had this interpretation that it looks really slow, and some people that I've seen, they don't really go fast, but you are working pretty much every muscle in your body, and you are just sweating. So, yeah, there are lots of different ways for men to exercise, and I would encourage guys also not to get discouraged because the gyms are closed. I mean, it's unfortunate. At times I'm discouraged, but there's different things you can do to still maintain your fitness. So
yeah, absolutely. And if you've ever tried cross-country skiing, there's a reason why they're going slow, because they're exhausted.
It's exhausting. Oh my gosh,
dying 1,000 deaths doing it. Yeah. But it's an amazing workout to do something like that. And even just, I know when COVID first hit for us, we walked for about an hour every day. Like every day, we just got out of the house and went for about an hour walk, because honestly, we had nothing else to do because everything was shut down. Yeah. And so just getting out and doing those kinds of things. And if you're locked inside your house during a snowstorm or something like that, shoveling, like even that, I mean, just go.
Yeah, your wives will appreciate that. Yeah.
That's right. Like forget about the snowblower. Seriously, forget about the snowblower. And pull your shovel out of the garage instead of the snowblower, and that'll give you a good, that'll work your heart out pretty good too, if you get enough snow. So, there's definitely some great ways that we can be exercising. And resistance bands, I've discovered the joy of resistance bands.
There's so many things you can do with it. Yeah.
Oh, there are. And you might not think it's a good workout, but there are some YouTube videos you can find on resistance bands. Mm-hmm. And it'll make you wonder why you wanted to use resistance bands, because after 60 seconds, you might be feeling like you're about to.
You're done.
There's just some great workouts that you can find online using resistance bands. One of the things that I've really noticed with COVID is the increase in internet use. I mean, people talk about being zoomed out. We're recording this podcast on Zoom, and there's just more screen time that's happening. People are binge watching The Mandalorian, or they're binge watching whatever on Netflix, and it's just it's crazy the amount of screen time that we have right now. I read a statistic that said only a little over half of men aged 20 to 34, so about 55% of men from 20 to 34 have been exercising regularly since COVID started. And 76% of men in that same age range have actually increased their internet use. Now, like most guys I know in their 20s are already using a lot of internet. And then COVID comes along and they've increased their internet use during that time. So how does more screen time actually impact our health?
Yeah, so there's two sides to this. There's the physical aspect of it, and then there's the mental aspect of it. So from a physical standpoint, it obviously impacts how much movement we're actually getting. So sitting in front of a screen decreases the amount of time we're getting up and moving around. It's just you're not moving. It's very rare that you're on the internet and you're doing some sort of physical activity. And throughout the pandemic, people are just undoubtedly spending more time in it, and we need to be very aware of the amount of time we're spending on the internet, as there's a lot of junk on the internet, as we all know. And yeah, it's important to get up and to just monitor the amount of time. I know it's easier said than done, but just making sure we're monitoring how much time we're actually spending on it. And it can really affect, actually, Kirk, you mentioned this earlier, just with sitting at a desk, you get rounded shoulders. It can affect our eyes. The amount of internet usage we're using can affect our eyes, our neck, our arms, our wrists. When we're on our phone, our head is always, hunched over. And you get that stiffness in your neck. I know for myself, I know when I'm spending too much time on the internet, when my wrists and my arms are getting really stiff and really sore. So being very aware of that, and staring into the screen for long periods of time gives you headaches, quite frankly. For me, is a big factor for me. So that's important. And again, taking those moments to get up and take some breaks. Again, you go down a rabbit hole of different things on the internet that time just completely flies by. And it could lead to weight gain, diabetes, and different heart disease. So there's no physical activity involved in that. So we need to be aware of that. And it affects our quality of sleep. This is a big thing. I'm guilty of this. For the most part, I use my phone or some sort of device right up until I fall asleep. And that greatly impacts not only the sleep quality, but the sleep duration as well. So it's important that we, take that away for about 15 to 30 minutes before we fall asleep, just so that our minds are at ease and at peace, and we're not thinking about things that we were looking at. There's no screen in front of us. It's just we need to be aware of that. And my wife and I, we don't have a TV in our room for precisely that reason. We try not to have our phones with us in our room as much as we can. So, and from a mental standpoint, it can lead to anxiety and depression. I think with social media is great, but there's a lot of things on social media that can be a detriment to our mental health. You can go down a rabbit hole of comparing yourself to other people that you may know, or even more importantly, celebrities that you know, or that you look up to, or that you follow. And you start comparing yourself with those people, and you start thinking, oh, they have this, I don't have that. So how do I get this? And how do I get that? And it becomes a downward spiral of just negative thoughts. So I think it's important that we, again, limit our internet usage. And to be honest with you, I'm actually surprised that number isn't even higher. Although that number is high, I'm actually surprised it isn't even higher. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about how easy it is to kind of get locked into, binge watching a show or spending more time on the internet, and just hours fly by. I know a lot of guys who just, quite frankly, they just aren't motivated. They don't feel any motivation to exercise, or they live in a space where they say, I'm too busy. I don't have the time to exercise. I don't have the time to think through my meals properly. I'm just always on the move. Just kind of wrapping up our whole conversation today, what kind of advice do you give to a guy who says, I'm not motivated to exercise, I'm too busy to do any of what we're talking about in this conversation? What advice do you have for him?
Yeah, so I wrote about this in one of my articles as well. I think it was actually my last article about the steps to success on working out from home. So number one, setting a time in the day that you will be able to get a workout in. So whether that's 30 minutes, an hour, setting that time and sticking to it. It's no different than when the pandemic, or when we didn't have this pandemic. I know a lot of people who go, well, my time is I go right after work. So it's no different. I feel like we should be very diligent in that, and setting a time that we know, okay, this is the time that we're going to have to work out. So let's do it that way, and let's stick to that. Another thing to do is to pick a spot in the house that where there's no distractions. So don't go where the TV is and where the couch is, and areas of the house that you'll be distracted. We need to keep our eyes forward and to not allow ourselves to get into watching TV when we're really supposed to be working out. I think it's important to, if you're like me, I like listening to music. So have your music on maybe a speaker, and then have your phone put away. Don't allow yourself to have your phone on you, because again, you can do a set, and then you may look at your phone for something, and then you just realize, oh, wow, I just spent 10 minutes doing that. I've completely forgotten about my workout. So, and finding how many times a week you can realistically work out as well. I think that's important. So whether that's 2 days a week or 5 days a week, making sure you are diligent with that, and not allowing yourself to get off course with that. So whether that's 3 days a week, so you could do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, whatever availability you have. So every guy's schedule is different. So it's different for everybody. And as I mentioned this earlier, just about your fitness goals. So being really diligent in writing out the goals that you want to achieve, and being very specific about those things as well. I think if you just make a lot of goals that are very broad and just, whatever, I think you don't feel the motivation to really achieve those goals. So be very specific about those goals. And so whether that's, muscular endurance or cardiovascular endurance, how am I going to go about this? How do I achieve that? What could I use? Things like that. And the other thing too, for me, is one of the things that I greatly miss about not being able to work out at the gym is just the accountability and the camaraderie that you have with people that you work out with. So whether that's a friend of yours or just other guys that you know of at the gym, a lot of guys, including myself, I know, miss just being able to shoot the breeze with other guys and to be able to get spots from other guys. And, hey, how's your workout going? How's this plan going that you've been wanting to do? How's it going? So this doesn't need to be done in isolation. Although we're all at home, it still doesn't need to be done in isolation. So being able to have, you can even have your spouse, write out your plans like I mentioned, give that to your spouse or your friend and have them encourage you and challenge you and keep each other accountable. So, hey man, like you've sent me this plan you have. You haven't really told me what's going on. Like, are you sticking with it? Like, what's going on? So just being really real with guys, just being really encouraging as well. Like I said, this doesn't have to be done in isolation. You still have the ability to share your goals and your workout plans with people as well, and allow for creativity. Not allowing yourself to get stagnant with your workouts. Always look for new things around the house that you could possibly use, different workouts maybe that you've never tried before. Allow yourself to be creative. I think that's important. And there's different things you can look on the internet for different workouts or YouTube. One of the things that I look at, it's a website called Calorie Workouts. It's a great source of just a plethora of information that you can have at your disposal, whether it's different stretches that they give you or different workouts. There's just so many different things. So if there's guys out there that maybe don't know where to start or what to do, there's tons of different, there's so many different sources of information that you can use.
What's that website again?
Calorie, so Darebee.
Great.
Yeah, it's I've been using it ever since I actually got into my program about 8 months ago when I started my personal training license. So yeah, that's great. And also using apps. I know some people they say, well, I don't really know what to do. Like, I know workouts, but what do I do? I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to start. So there's all sorts of different apps that you can use. You can look them online. There's so many of them that will tell you what to do and how to do it, so that it's essentially like having an instructor, a virtual instructor that can, run you through all sorts of workouts. So yeah, there's lots.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. For me, the thing that motivated me from the 280 pounds to where I am today was actually my daughter. And she doesn't know this probably. But there was just this sense of, I don't want to be the dad who dies of a heart attack before my daughter gets married. Yeah. I want to be able to walk my daughter down the aisle. And so I always had that vision of one day being able to walk my daughter down the aisle. And we haven't gotten there yet. So I'll have to have another motivation after she's married. But for now, that's kind of what's kept me motivated around this whole thing is, she changed my life in a lot of ways that she doesn't even realize. Hey, Rob, I want to say thank you so much for the wisdom that you've shared with us today. And these are just some great practical tips. You've talked about some articles you've written. Those articles, guys, can be found on the impactus.org website, along with a ton of other information that will just equip you in different areas of your life. But Rob has several articles up there already, and you can check those out and learn some more about some of these tips that he's talking about today. So thanks, Rob, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Hey, as we close the podcast today, guys, I just want to remind all of us about what God's word says about our bodies in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 and 20. Don't you know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God? You are not your own. You are bought at a price, so glorify God with your body. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time on the Impactus Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Impactus Podcast. To learn more about living a life of purpose and godly impact, check out impactus.org.